So hello, my name is Jane. I'm going to be leading this talk. I'm going to share my presentation with you now. Um, just all right. There we go. I hope you can see it. Is it visible? Yeah, it looks like it is. Okay, great. Maybe I can do this. Perfect. Right. So this conversation is about different type of analysts. My name is Jane Glazer. I'm a recently promoted senior yield analyst at Criteo. And what this talk was really inspired by is my promotion when I started thinking about how I came to be a yield analyst. What is it? What does it mean to be a yield analyst? Who is it? How did it happen that I agreed to be a yield analyst and not any other kind of analyst? And so on and so forth. So I'm going to share during this conversation a lot of the insights that I gathered throughout my years at Criteo and IPONWeb, the company where I truly work at, which was acquired by Criteo, and hopefully will be useful to you. So a little bit about myself. I studied mathematics and computer science, first at Imperial College in London, then at MIT, and work. I right now work. There are a lot of names. So in the supply side platform called the Media Grid that belongs to IPONWeb, and IPONWeb was recently acquired by Criteo. So I am working within the Criteo team right now, even though technically I'm working in the Media Grid and IPONWeb. So what is it that I'm going to be talking about? Just a little kind of in the beginning overview. What does it even mean, an analyst? What are we talking about here? Then I'm going to go a little bit deeper into the types of analysts, the ones that I mentioned in the title, and maybe some other ones. And I think the last section maybe would be the most useful one, talking about how one would transition from analyst one analyst role to another, and if this is even necessary, and how does this process work? Because this talk is very oriented on people wanting to find the job for them and making sure that they're doing the right thing, they're doing exactly what they want to be doing, what they're enjoying, and what they're good at as well. And then we will have like a couple of minutes for Q&A, and if in case anyone has any questions, and summary as well. So just a little kind of thing to start with, like, what does it even mean, the word analyst? We hear it all the time, at least I hear it all the time. So many people tell me, I'm an analyst, I'm an analyst. What does it even mean? Where is it coming from? Just like a little icebreaker, wanted to ask if anyone knows the etymology of this word. And feel free to write in the chat if you want to. And also you can ask questions, I think, during the talk in case you want to. In case you don't, I'll just tell you the answer myself, but I'll give you another 10 seconds. Fair. Yes, fair. To be honest, I didn't know as well until I started prepping for this talk. It's apparently from the 1650s, so 17th century. One versus in algebraic analysis, mathematicians killed in algebraic geometry, from French word. A person who analyzes naturally. I think the reason why I decided to put it out on the slide is this connection to mathematics and algebra that is present in this definition. And I think a lot of people, when we talk about analysts and data analysts, think about mathematical background, computer science background, being absolutely mandatory to be able to work as an analyst. But in reality, it's not. It's a little bit more complicated. It's very useful. And coming myself from a mathematical background, I'm really grateful for it. And I use it a lot, but I know that it's not necessary. And this is why I think it's important to understand exactly what those jobs are offering you to do. So let's move on. This is just a screenshot from Glassdoor. Um, and I typed analyst. I'm sure all of you know that Glassdoor is a website where you can look for jobs. And I just typed analyst, and so many different things popped up. I just wanted to show you that none of those things are what I quoted in the name of this talk. Entry level business analyst, financial analyst, just analyst. Um, if we would go over every single one of those job offers in the Glassdoor search, we would not have time to cover it, and then they would start repeating themselves, and it would not make any sense. So I just want to kind of put it out there that there are no strict definitions. People are using this word very vaguely, and it's important to have a read into the job um, proposal to understand really what this employer is asking for, but also not to get really lost and understand that there are kind of groups of analyst roles, right? Business analyst, like I would say that finance analyst is close to business analyst. They're doing different things, but they are connected somehow. What does it mean, just an analyst? I don't even know. I would not probably advise to apply a job that doesn't specify what exactly you would be doing, or I would advise to really have a conversation with a recruiter to further understand what's going on. So kind of the takeaway from this slide is that it's okay not to understand exactly what the role wants just by the title, because there are so many of them. People keep inventing them, coming up with new ones, and it's all about the conversation, the job description, and so on and so forth. This data can be more helpful than the title itself, because also when someone says, let me have a read of the comment. Yes, exactly. So many analyst jobs, but no one really understands what they are. And also, even when people say, for example, business analyst, it really depends on the company, what they mean by it. And it's the same with the level. So senior, junior, and middle are different levels of analysts that exist. And it's kind of a wide known tiering, let's say, but really it means very different things in different companies. So for example, in the company where I work, middle, it doesn't even exist. You go from being just an analyst to senior analyst. That's just the two things. I mean, technically they know that middle exists, but they don't use it. So when I would apply to, for example, another job, even when obviously the notion of the seniority that I have is a little bit different to maybe the notion of seniority that someone else would have. So I've seen job offers when they say at least 5 years of experience for senior analysts, and I don't have 5 years of experience, but I do have the title. So it's really, really company specific, and that's so important to understand and not just get overwhelmed but by all those namings, and make sure to dig a little bit deeper into like the notions that are used by a specific company. So now I'm going to cover, I think, the main types of analysts that I've encountered. But again, I'm speaking from the experience of my job, and I'm sure there are so many other and different ones. Um, but I think it's just going to give you an overview of how you can take a name and start thinking about what it does and just decipher it a little bit for yourself. And then, of course, you need to go back and check with your recruiter or your manager or hiring manager or your team lead, whoever it is that you're in conversation about your role or potential role is. But just kind of, I want to give an overview, and I want to share um, the things that I've found about those roles during my work. So first, a product analyst. For a long time, I have to confess, for a long time, I thought that this is what I want to be doing, and this is the direction where I want to be going. Up until I've really truly understood what what is it that product analyst does, at least in our company, and then I realized that it's not exactly what I want. So I had a lot of conversations with product managers, trying to convince them to hire me, and they didn't really want to. And then when I really understood what is it that they're doing, I realized why they didn't want to hire me, because they're doing things that I'm not really interested in, and they could see it based on my job, and it all kind of made sense. Um, I personally confused two teams: product team and go to market team. And I don't talk about go to market analyst here in this talk, but I'll mention it anyway. So, what is product? I'll give you an example from again from my work. Product for us is a UI and all the the client-facing mechanism, the client-facing UI, and all the tools and other things that it has that the clients can use, but also the operational team can use to make sure that we enable different processes, different tests, different setups, and things like this. So this is the product. The UI is the product. We are talking about like the Media Grid company. We're building an SSP. We're building a platform. There's also a notion of our product in the sense that, like, how do we establish ourselves? What are we proposing to our clients? We're proposing, for example, that we are like our clients are the most direct ones. Doesn't matter for this conversation now what does direct mean, but we have reseller and direct clients, indirect and direct. We're positioning ourselves in the market to the industry in some way. So for a long time, I thought that this positioning, like we say that we have high quality traffic, we say that we're partnering with those people, we say that we are this and that and those things, and I thought that the development of this image of the product is the product itself, and helping develop this image is being a product analyst. So helping understand what are the industry trends, where are we going, what can be useful, which niche is already taken, where we shouldn't really go. And of course, the analysts work with the data a lot, but it doesn't have to be just, kind of raw logs or numbers. It can be also data available in the internet. You can analyze different papers, different available information, and make conclusions based on that information. Basically, what the analyst is doing, and any analyst, product, yield, any other analyst, he is looking at the data, reading the data, thinking about it, using different tools to, again, analyze it, but then coming up with a conclusion. So looking at the data and then making a conclusion. That's two things, two parts of the job. First, you think about it, you work with it, and the process of working can be varies from role to role, but then you have to give an output. You have to give some kind of conclusion. What did you come up with? So for a very long time, I thought that product analyst is someone who is, reading the papers, thinking about the industry, analyzing the data that we have and comparing it to the data sets available publicly, so that we know, like, where are we doing better than competitors, where are we not doing better than competitors. And really, at least in our company, that's what go-to-market analysts do. So go-to-market is basically a part of the company that deals with those relationships with the market, with the industry. And of course, they are responsible for the product as well in some way, because eventually their decisions and their view of the industry affects how the product is built. But the product team is a separate one. The product team is just the team that, creates those features. They take feedback from go-to-market team. They take feedback from the operational team. They take feedback from the clients directly. But then they're building, like, step by step, A/B test by A/B test, different features in that UI, and that's what they do. That's what they focus. And the bullet points that you see here on the page are, I took them, I think, from Coursera page or something, from one of their courses, where they talk about how they can teach you how to be product analyst. And again, like, the first bullet point, monitor product performance, is such a complicated one, because you can think, like, thinking about global product and product's placement in the industry and monitoring that performance would be also, again, monitoring performance. But product analyst is just analyst is about monitoring the performance of those features, of, in my case, this UI, of how it works. If nothing breaks, it's quite technical, and it's not very business oriented. So I think that's a very important thing to understand. Product deals with the product. Whatever the company is doing, it's very tacky. It's very like, let's add this button. And so when I was thinking about being a product analyst, one of the potential tasks that my potential manager gave me was to analyze what would happen if we added a button to UI. Like, there was a button, they were thinking about adding it. They wanted to know if it would be useful for the client. So I'd have to gather feedback from the clients, analyze how much it would cost us to do that, think about the benefits that it would bring us like the feedback that we would gather from the customers during their work with this button. What would change for us? Is there a potential like increasing revenue from this button and things like this? So it was just one button, but it would have been quite a big project for a few weeks. Um, and that's the kind of thing that you deal with. I think it's also important to know that you don't even like you still have to go out there and talk to the client in this kind of role, and sometimes the data that you're working with is literally their feedback, something that they write in an email and not a data set. That is a part of the job for analysts very often, but for this particular role it's very much integrated with the features that a product team is deploying and delivering. Again, very important to know that this is from my experience. Someone in some company, they might confuse product analyst and go-to-market team just the way that I did, and they would put that into one person. So just that's something to think about, and make sure that you to ask before starting your role. Yield analyst. Yield analyst is me. I'm a yield analyst. So that's someone who really the only thing I sit within the operational group. Um, that's something that will probably change soon, but for now, that's where I am. So I'm with the team that consists of technical account managers, people who work with the client directly, but they're not sales or client services. They're people who are supporting the clients technically. And in a way, yield analyst is someone who is supporting the clients technically as well. um, I think a lot of analysts, or maybe all analysts, have a lot of people that they're taking the tasks from. So basically, for yield analyst, you have to go and talk to other teams. You focus on money. You focus on making sure that you can find a way to make more money to the company, and that's what everyone does in the company essentially. But for yield analysts, that's the key role. For example, for product analyst, if they deploy, like if they evaluate some kind of UI feature that would make the client very, very happy, would not really bring any money, but would make the client happy, that can be a great recommendation for them to give. They can say, look, we've analyzed it, this is not going to be beneficial from monetary perspective, but this will make our like most favorite clients happy. And that's enough. That's a good recommendation to give. For yield analyst, the thing that the yield analyst is focusing on is money, and just money. That's all. The yield analyst wants to find how we can change our product, like what requests we need to make into the product team, what requests we need to make into operational team, what we need to ask our clients to give us, what kind of information, what kind of changes that we want them to do, what kind of positioning in the market we need to make sure to attract more money. So yield analysts can come to go-to-market team and say, look, I've done my research, and I think that there is a gap in the industry. So again, things are really, really connected here, but bear with me. Yield analysts can come to the go-to-market team and say, look, I've done my research. I think we are not benefiting from being only direct and like having only direct clients. We also want to have reseller clients because they will bring us more money. And then go-to-market team decide, and the yield analyst would say, like, I think that this will bring us $100,000 per month. But then it sits within the go-to-market team to make that decision. Are we really willing to change our image, the way we position ourselves in the industry for those extra 100 extra K a month or not? And I think that's also a very, very important point to make. And I mentioned that briefly, but I want to make sure that it's heard. The fact that analyst is very rarely the one who's making decisions. Analyst's job is to analyze and propose a solution, or not even a solution, but to give a recommendation. I think it's not an easy thing to accept and to adjust to, but it's important to know your boundaries and to know where your job ends. It's not your job to convince people to make the change that you think is beneficial. It's your job to show them the monetary value of this change. And if then they decide not to go for it, they have their reasons. Maybe, in the long term, go-to-market team thinks that their positioning is going to be more beneficial, and they're just not willing to invest, to risk that image by 100 extra K. For you, like sitting and like trying to optimize money, try and find ways to make money. It can sound like the most important thing, but it maybe is not. So that's yield analyst, and let's move on. Business analyst, also easily confused, I think, with yield analyst. Why not? I think, and yes, that's something I'm going to talk about next. So, business analyst is someone who um, really creates a lot of reports, forecasting, planning, monitoring, financial modeling, kind of tries to look into the future without necessarily a lot of technical context and like not necessarily understanding a lot about how the product works, all those nitty gritty details about the features, the positioning in the market. Business analyst is someone who, the person who create those like Excels that probably everyone sees a lot in their job and makes forecasts, and they are not meant to be very rigorous, and that's sometimes hard for other analysts to accept. But there is a need for an overview, and it's, I think, widely accepted that business analysts are doing this overview for client solutions, for sales, for leadership teams, for everyone who doesn't have the time to dig into the details. And yes, it can be inaccurate in terms of the predictions, and it doesn't always include really complicated forecasting. It can be very simple, it can be just extrapolation of what already exists. But it has to be very well maintained and very well presented. And even though, like, personally, again, speaking to my about my experience, I had problems with accepting that in the beginning, the fact that presentation also matters a lot in this kind of job. And I thought that the most important thing is to make sure that the data you're delivering is correct and important and good. But really, presentation matters when you are speaking and presenting your data, and when your client, internal client, is someone who only has 5 minutes a day to look at your data set, but not an hour. You've got to make sure that it looks good, and that it's readable, and that it's accessible. And this is not an easy thing. And personally, I'm not so good at it. So this is why I very much respect business analysts, and I know that they're doing an important job. Um, Ideally, of course, all of those people should be working together. Business analysts can get more insights from yield or product analysts, but they are the ones who are creating the reports, the presentable ones. Um, and they're usually good at it, or they should be good at it at least. Let's move on. So I think this is the trickiest one, data analyst slash data scientist, and this is the one that is going to take us back to the first slide where we talked about mathematics. This is really the first role out of all of the ones that I mentioned before that requires a deep understanding of mathematics and statistics and computer science and programming. Again, it very much depends on the company and the role. And I put a slash here between data scientist and data analyst, because comparing to the other roles we talked about before, these are similar, but they're so very different among themselves as well. So data analyst is someone who is much closer to the other analyst we talked about. Data scientist is someone who is, again, a scientist and someone who really wants to do it. Also depends on the company, but sometimes it's someone who's doing research, someone who's not connected even potentially to the work that the directly that the company is doing, someone who is trying to find innovative ways of optimizing something and might not be succeeding at it, or might be succeeding at it. Someone who can still be working on something that is used on a daily basis, but someone who is detached from the business context, from the product context, from the desires of business people, who is just working on like a quite scientific problem, and his goal is to solve this problem. He needs a lot of hard skills to do that. He does not, I mean, everyone needs soft skills, but data scientists need them the least, because they need to have the hard skills and need to make sure that they're doing their job. They're finding new algorithms, new way to analyze the data. Um, Data analysts, they are tricky. They are in between. If there is like a scale, maybe for another thing that would be very interesting to think about the amount of like soft and hard skills that is needed for every role. For data analyst, the amount of soft skills that it is needed is much higher than for data scientist. If you are a data analyst who doesn't know how to talk to people and doesn't like talking to people and just wants to do their own job without being, going to a single meeting, then you'll probably have a bit of a problem, because even though you need to know mathematics, you need to predict, you need to build statistical models, you need to know how to code, you need to sometimes work with machine learning algorithms, or I don't know, neural networks, whatever it is, logistic regression, the simplest things. You also need to be able to communicate those, and you also need to make sure that they are understood, and that you're not overcomplicating the task. So I think the biggest risk with data analyst, because you have those hard skills, and you want to use them because that's what you like, that's what's fun for you. Sometimes the easiest answer is the simplest ones, and it's not. The trick is to know where complex solutions are required and where they're not. um, the best data analysts I know have great hard skills and can build any model you like, but they also know when it's not needed and when you need to just, put a quick fix that would just take 10 minutes to do something, and it would be a great proof of concept for something, for some solution, and that's enough. So knowing that difference is what makes a data analyst great. But it's a lot of technical work. It's a lot more of working with the data than for other roles. It's a lot more looking at the numbers. Cleaning up database, such an important role, and like not a role but a task for a data analyst. Making sure that the data makes sense, just visually looking through it. Again, you don't necessarily need to invent a very complicated algorithm that would go through your data set and delete the entries that are not convenient or not needed for you. You can just look at it with your own eyes. And that's kind of the job that I do very often. I receive a lot of huge data sets, and first thing that I'm doing, I'm just looking on them with my eyes to make sure that they make sense. And only after that, I do any kind of cleanups, getting rid of whatever I don't need, making sure that I'm building a correct conclusion out of what I'm seeing, etc., etc. Um, you've got to look at your data. You've got to look at it no matter what kind of analyst you are. But for the data analyst, it's a little bit more important than for someone else. So this is the last part, and this is kind of just a conclusion about everything, and also a lot of personal experience. I think if you think that you want to be an analyst and you don't really know, you still like you listen to me blabbing for half an hour, you read a lot about this, you still don't know what kind of analyst you want to do, start by being some kind of analyst. Doesn't matter what. Just start. Get a job and then look around and see how does it work in your company. Who is responsible for what? Ask around. Make sure that you go to the whatever meetings you can go to, just listen to the topics that people talk about, and then make sure to identify what interests you and what doesn't, and then make sure to identify the structure of the company, to make sure to understand what kind of teams exist there. So if your company doesn't have like a go-to-market team, and all of those like things that are supposed to be done by go-to-market team are done by product, just make a mental note about this and understand that if you're going to be in this company a product analyst, you'd have to deal with that as well, with that side of the work. If you see that, for example, there's no operational team, you have only one client, or you don't have a client, like whatever, there's no one who is dealing with like customer success data analysis, you can also make a note of that, and maybe that's something that you would be interested to do, and that's something you can propose to someone. Why I said that I said I'm going to share some personal experience. And for me, basically, when I started as a technical account manager at IPONWeb, there were no analyst roles, and it was invented for me because I started doing something that sounded more like analyst work than technical account. I was looking for those ways to make more money. I started kind of digging deeper into the data. I wasn't that interested in customer support. I started looking into like product features that are available to us and that other companies have, and I started making kind of taking longer to dig into the data than technical account manager needs to. So I just naturally started doing things that I like, and then the role was born out of this. I didn't even get a chance to propose it, which I think I would have. I mean, no, I think I was proposing it, but then it was born, and it made sense because I already started doing things that I like, and it worked. So make sure to identify what is it that you want to do, what is it that interests you, and also make sure to understand how your company is structured. Because even if you know exactly what you want, but you don't know how your company works, you're not going to get anywhere. And that's me talking about like mid and senior level, but it is so important to understand the bigger context of the company. I think it's probably the most important thing. And it's a very hard job to do, and it's not easy, and no one's going to help you with that, and no one's going to be open to you about how the company's structured. And some companies have like org charts publicly available, some don't. The ones that do obviously make your life easier, but even when they do, of course, they're not going to tell you everything, and they're not going to tell you like team descriptions, or maybe it's buried somewhere in Confluence. But do keep your mind open, do talk to people, do make sure that you understand the structure, you understand who is responsible for what. Then you find what is it that you're interested in, understand if that what team does this lie with, and then you can either like if there is a role already available, you can just apply for it, but if it's not, don't hesitate to propose it. Of course, the company where I worked wasn't that big at the time, so it was quite easy to do that. In a bigger company, it's much harder, but if you show the value of what you're doing, I don't think people would have issues with creating a role for you. Or maybe I'm just hopeful, but I think that it makes sense. Or even if not, of course, you always can apply from a different kind of company. So, and the third point, bullet point is so important as well. Get the skills you need for the role you want, because if you start by being a business analyst, but you understand that this is really not your thing, and you want to be a data analyst or you want to be a data scientist, you can't just change and become a data scientist in one day. You do need to learn your math. You do need to learn how to code. You do need to learn, SQL to be product analyst, for example. No, none of those things are impossible to learn. None of them, like none of the things that are one needs to learn for all of those roles apart from data scientists are hard. Everyone can do that, but you do need to spend some time on it. It's very unrealistic to to propose, like if you are a business analyst, you basically don't need pretty much any hard skills. But if you want to be a yield analyst, you do need them. You need to know SQL, and SQL is not something that is hard to learn. So if you come to your manager and say, look, I want to be a yield analyst and I don't know SQL, maybe they will help you with it. Maybe they will pay for your courses, but it's a maybe. If you come and say, look, I already learned SQL, at least a little bit. There are so many resources online, free, available to just do some practice and learn some basic things. And when you know the basic things, that's what people usually are asking during the interview. You can then move on and learn the rest during your job. So make sure to find out exactly what's needed. I would say it's really just 3 things or 4. So for business analyst, you just need Excel probably. For yield, product, data, for your yield and product, let's put it this way, you need SQL. For data analyst, you also need Python or any other programming language, or the basics of it at least. For data scientists, of course, you need so much more. You need to algorithms and mathematical statistics and things like this. So make sure to either remember this, what I just said, or Google it, or ask at your current job, like what are the hard skills that are needed for a specific role. And that's a wrap. That's really all I wanted to talk about. I think there's no more. Yeah, just a little summary, but basically everything that we just talked about. It's important for me because I never know the audience of this kind of talk, so I don't know if people are middle, junior, senior, not analysts yet. feel free to write that in the chat as well, something I should have asked in the beginning. But if you're just applying for this kind of job and you don't know exactly what you want to do, don't worry. Just start by applying somewhere. You're going to figure it out during your role, during your job. When you're already in the company and you can have a look around and you can understand how it's structured, it's so much easier to understand what is it that you like than just, reading things online and guessing and reading one thing about one company and then another one about the other company. Every company is structured in its own way. And it's okay that those definitions are not aligned. No one owes you that alignment. So just start figuring it out in one company. Don't try to figure it out for everyone. Make sure to check in with the team lead, recruiter, whoever you're talking about this role. Again, to the same point, to understand exactly how things are functioning in the company you're applying to. And only apply math and coding to the extent that you want, because I think a lot of people are really scared of those things, mathematics and coding and programming, and they're worried that they want to be using their analytical side of brain. They want to be thinking about conclusions, data, decisions, but they really don't want to do any math. Don't worry about it and just do it up to the point that you want. There are also a lot of people who feel like myself, a little bit guilty for not using a lot of hard skills in their job and like not using enough mathematics or coding. But you can be such a great analyst without ever coding for a day in your life, and you can be a horrible analyst, a data analyst, data scientist, when you code all day, but you can't explain what is it exactly that you're doing. So hard skills are not the only thing that is needed here, and be sure to remember that. With that, I will end. If anyone has any questions, I would be very happy to answer. I hope this was useful and this kind of gave you a little bit of overview into different roles, but of course, there's so many more. Thank you. I'm glad that hopefully it was useful. Oh, here we go. Technical aspects of my work, except SQL. I use Python, not very often, but I do sometimes. And we actually have a data, like a proprietary data visualizer sorry, the complicated word that we're using. It's called USlicer. It's basically just a way to visualize data. It's very useful. I have to know how to work with that, but it only is useful for this specific company. Right now, as I mentioned, we got acquired by Criteo, and there are other things that I need to learn now. For example, how to use Tableau, and how to build reports more visual. For example, I used to work in Google Cloud, so in the cloud system. Now we're moving to working with the servers, the servers that Criteo as a company owns. So I have to know how to work with them, how to move data from one server to another, how to construct the logs. So we have some logs stored already. Some logs are basically data sets, information, and I've got to know how to build different data sets from the existing ones. And it's not only, I mean, sometimes it's just part of it is building an SQL query, but the other part is just making sure that everything lies in the right folder in the right server, moving it from one place to another. That's something that I don't know yet how to do, but learning to. Yes, I think that's the main new skills that I'm going to be learning, but mostly SQL. 90% of the work is SQL. Well, I mean, 90% of the work is thinking, but 90% of technical work is SQL. 10% is Python for me. All right. Well, thank you very much for attending. I wish you all luck with your job search if you're looking for a job right now. If not, then wish you luck in advancing in your career, and hopefully it was all useful. And have a great day. Thank you.